The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and can also be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring, do you love me? Love. We all seek it, but does anyone really know what it is? Like all things, love is a frequency. When we incarnate, we're separated from Source. Source is the frequency of unity and love. In unity, love loves itself and other, as there is no separation between the two. As we're born into the separation of duality, we're taken out of the universal flow of love. This separation is very traumatic, and for a while the child is totally dependent upon the parents to provide the love they've been disconnected from. Within a supportive environment of love and acceptance, the child can eventually learn to channel the love frequency from Source for themselves. No one can survive, much less thrive, without love. Infants deprived of love and affection die with no obvious physical cause. Love is intrinsic to life, and like all indispensable things, it's been ruthlessly exploited. From a young age, we're taught love is to be earned. If you're good, you're worthy of love. If you're bad, it's withheld until you're good. In recent years, this tactic has been deemed more humane than the prior spare the rod and spoil the child parenting practices. Personally, I'd rather take a good old-fashioned beating. Early withholding of love and approval produces adults who can't love themselves, as they've been taught several devastating things. 1, being loved is totally dependent upon our worthiness. 2, our worthiness is determined by outside sources. 3, our merit is totally dependent upon our performance rather than what we are. 4, therefore, we're not lovable the way we are. We end up judging ourselves unworthy of love and thus unable to love ourselves. When we don't love ourselves, we can't attune to the frequency of love to channel it into the world. We're left looking outside of ourselves for the love we need. Now here's the kicker. If we don't love ourselves, we can't love anyone who is anything remotely like us. We look to our opposite to love us. While said opposites attract, they don't work well together. Much energy is expended trying to find common ground in the relationship, leaving very little room to work as a team. Both parties are left feeling misunderstood and unloved, with at least one, if not both individuals, trying to be other than what they are in order to earn the love they need. There's no room for service to the world as the relationship pushes the individual out of their natural expression and consumes all the available substance. If we don't love and accept ourselves the way we are, we're not in tune with true expression. This distorts our natural frequency. Without true expression, we have no hope of attracting a balanced spiritual partnership. What is a spiritual partnership? Spiritual partners are similar and complementary sovereign individuals who can love and accept themselves and each other as they are. Because the individuals have much in common, the relationship requires much less maintenance. This leaves a couple free to support themselves and each other in a common goal. It's much like sound waves in a sound chamber. 2 sound waves of equal volume and wavelength, but opposite crests and troughs, when sounded at the same time, result in silence as they cancel each other out. 2 identical sound waves broadcast at the same time produce well over twice the volume, of one alone. When considering all of this, love thy neighbor as thyself takes on a whole new meaning. Our guest this hour, Dr. Margaret Paul, is a best-selling author and co-creator of the powerful inner bonding self-healing process and the related SelfQuest self-healing software program. She's appeared on numerous radio and TV programs, including Oprah. Her books are entitled, Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You? Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by God? Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by My Kids? Healing Your Aloneness and Inner Bonding. After this commercial break, I'll introduce Margaret, and together we'll consider the true meaning of intimacy and love. So don't go away. You're listening to The Science of Magic. Prior innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Margaret Paul, best-selling author of Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You? Margaret has a PhD in psychology, is a relationship expert, public speaker, consultant, and artist. She's successfully worked with thousands and taught classes and seminars for over 48 years. Margaret's website is margaret@innerbonding.com. Margaret, thank you so much for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward.
Why do you think love is so important in our lives?
Well, love, when I say love makes the world go round, love is what makes us feel safe. Love is what gives us connection. Love is what fills the heart and soul. And, one of the reasons it's so important, like you were saying, to learn to love ourselves is that then we're in a place to share love. So many people get together because they want to be loved. And then, they meet somebody who also wants to be loved, and for a while they're giving each other what they want, but inevitably they're going to disappoint each other because they're not going to give love exactly the way the other person wants. And this is one of the reasons it's so important to learn to love ourselves, is because then we get filled up with love. We're bringing love inside. We're connecting to a higher source of love, filling ourselves, and then we can approach a relationship in order to share love, rather than trying to get love, which is a completely different intention.
Well, I got a tough question for you here, Margaret. What is love?
Well, love is many things. The Bible says love is gentle, love is kind. Love is that which makes us feel important to each other, makes us feel safe inside, makes us feel safe with each other. Love, to me, love is the energy of the universe. That's what spirit is. That's what God is love. And there's there's many different definitions. I think love is an action, as well as a feeling. The actions of love are kindness and caring and compassion, gentleness, tenderness. Certainly, we're not going to feel love by somebody if they're not treating us with that kind of kindness and caring. But as far as defining the experience of love, I mean, that's like trying to define the color red. It's something that when I feel love in my heart, I feel my heart just filled with peace, filled with joy, filled to the brim, and I want to share it. I want to offer it. I want to give it. I want to, we're social beings, and when we feel that love in our heart, we want to share it. But I think it's not an easy thing to explain. Sometimes I talk about it like a state of grace, when we feel like everything looks brighter and there's a sense of joy inside. That's when I have an experience of love in my heart.
It's interesting, isn't it? This supposedly most powerful expression in the universe, this thing that we all, ultimately, it's what we're seeking. Whether we think we want to be rich or this or that, it's usually we're looking for love. And yet, we can't define it, we can't see it, we can't touch it, and we can't even say what it is. I find that pretty fascinating, don't you?
I know, but like so many things that are important, we can feel it, we can experience it, and I don't think it's that hard to differentiate between what is love and what isn't love when we tune into our own heart and when we trust what's going on inside of us.
Boy, that's the kicker, isn't it? So what do you think is our greatest misconception about love?
Well, I think that one of the problems is that people think that the greatest experience in life is somebody loving them, is receiving love. They think that if somebody loves them, then they're going to feel like they're okay. They're going to feel a sense of worth. They're going to feel safe. They're going to feel, content inside. But the problem is that that's a huge mistake. One of the greatest mistakes we can make is to think that it's getting love that actually brings us joy. The truth is, it's loving ourselves, learning to really value our true self, our essence, learning to connect with our higher self and bring that love inside, fill ourselves and share it. To me, the greatest experience in life is the sharing of love. And so I think there's a huge misconception that getting love will feel as good as sharing love, and it doesn't at all. It doesn't come close.
It's pretty interesting. So how do you see people using love to control each other?
Well, they're not using love to control. They're using control to control. They may put it under the guise of love. But controlling behavior is really the opposite of loving behavior. People try to control because they're trying to get love. That's why they try and control, and they're abandoning themselves. They're not loving themselves, and so they feel anxious. They feel distressed. They feel empty. They think they have to get love in order to feel okay. So they try and control, perhaps by overgiving, being too nice, getting angry, blaming, demanding, giving themselves up. There's a lot of ways that people try and control. And, of course, all of these ways that come from fear, that come from not being loved because they're not loving themselves, lead to dysfunction in relationships. One of the most common relationship dysfunction is one person trying to get love by demanding, being judgmental, being angry, and the other resisting or shutting down, withdrawing, in order to not be controlled by the other person. And yet both of these people want love, and yet they're caught in a system, which is a very common system, that comes from their upbringing. It may have been what they saw their parents do or other caregivers do. Most of us have learned to protect ourselves in various controlling ways. But it's these very controlling behaviors that grind down love. Even if you're trying to control by being nice and giving yourself up, that's not actually going to feel loving to the other person. The energy of love is very different than the energy of compliance or the energy of niceness that we do in order to control.
So, how can you tell if someone's manipulating you in pretending that it's love? And what can you do about it?
Well, yeah, one of the ways that we tell is, again, the more we do our own inner work, the more we learn to love ourselves and stay tuned into our own feelings. And big part of loving ourselves is being present in our body, not in our head. Our head doesn't know really a whole lot about whether somebody's manipulating, because there's a lot of people that are very good at it. But when you're in your body, you can feel the energy of it. And so the more inner work you do to stay present in your body with your feelings, with your intuition, with your inner knowing, the more you can actually feel the energy of manipulation. I think it's unfortunate that a lot of people on this planet don't trust their inner knowing. They use their head instead of their heart and their gut. And actually, every successful person knows that they have to rely on their gut for a lot, because our head is like our computer. It's just programmed with old false beliefs, and it can't let us know whether somebody is manipulating, but our heart and soul can let us know. And so that's in our body. That's not in our head. So the more we learn to stay tuned in, the more we can tell right away, because of the energy of whether somebody's coming from their heart or whether they're coming from their fear and desire to control and manipulate.
So it sounds like to me we have a whole bunch of baggage standing between us and our ability to love ourselves. How do we get through this baggage? How do you love yourself?
Well, this is the process that I teach, which is called inner bonding, and it's a 6-step process. If people learn this process and go step by step through it, they will learn to love themselves. It's a process that you can do throughout the day. Anytime you're feeling anything other than peace and fullness inside. And with practice, you can move through it in just a few minutes and really get to the point of being able to love yourself. And it starts with being tuned into your body, like I was saying, step 1, being present in your body, and wanting responsibility for your own feelings. Most of us have learned not to take responsibility. We've learned to make others responsible, or to ignore our feelings, or to judge our feelings, or to numb out with various addictions. In step 1 of inner bonding, we move towards our feelings with kindness and compassion and a desire to take responsibility. And then we move to step 2, which is we go into our heart and we choose the intention to learn about loving ourselves. In the inner bonding process, there's just the intention to learn or the intention to control. The intention to control is going to, not lead you towards understanding what loving yourself is about. So when we move into an intention to learn, we open the heart. That opens the heart, and that allows our higher self to be present with us. That opens us to our higher wisdom. And then in step 3, we dialogue. We go inside. We find out how we're treating ourselves, what we're telling ourselves, what our false beliefs are, what somebody else might be doing in fact us negatively. It's a deep exploration. And once we understand how we're abandoning ourselves, that's causing us to, say, feel anxious or depressed or guilty or ashamed or angry or empty or alone, all these feelings are coming from some form of self-abandonment, then we go to our higher self. And we ask, what is the truth about any of these false beliefs, and what is loving to ourselves? And with practice, we can access that information. It's not actually that hard. And then in step 5, we take whatever action our higher self has instructed us to take. And then in step 6, we go back in and we evaluate, how do I feel now? Well, if indeed we've taken a loving action, we're going to feel relief. We're going to feel lightness. We're going to feel a lessening of anxiety or depression or guilt.
Margaret, we're going to have to pick up with this on the other side of a commercial break. Margaret and I will return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Radio Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Previous broadcasts of thought-provoking episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We will be back, so don't go away. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Margaret Paul, best-selling author of Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You? Margaret, there was an interesting question that came to my mind as we were just closing out our last segment, and that is, you spoke of higher self. What is our higher self?
Well, my experience is that our soul is a very, very big energy, way too big to fit inside our body. And so a part of our soul is inside, kind of in our gut, our inner knowing, our true self, and the rest of our soul is all around us, and that is our higher self. And we can imagine that, if you want to use your imagination, as an older, wiser part of ourselves that's here to help us and guide us. And it's my experience that this aspect of our soul, of our higher soul, is connected to the universe and connected to all the information in the universe. It's just like when you get on the internet, you get connected to vast information. Our higher self does that. It's like it connects us to the internet of the universe. And when we ask a question like, what is loving to myself, or what is in my highest good in this situation, or what is the truth, then our higher self pops that information into our mind. We start to get ideas. It's a creative process. And it may pop it in through images, through words, through feelings, but Spirit finds some way of communicating with us when we sincerely ask a question such as, what is loving to me, or what is in my highest good? It's not questions like, what's the lottery numbers? It's questions about love and truth. That's what our higher self tends to. That's how our higher self guides us.
So how can we tell that these things that just pop into our mind are actually coming from our higher self and not our conditioning or the world around us?
Well, we have to test it out. When I first started to do this, I didn't trust it. I thought I was making it up, or I thought it was just something I had heard or read. And so I had to test it out. And we can't just believe something. I don't believe in just believing something without testing it out. So when I would get these ideas popping in, sometimes I would listen, and I would see what happened. I would do what I was guided to do and see what happened. Sometimes I wouldn't. And over again, I was not happy with the results of not following that guidance. And so over time, I came to know that this guidance is accurate. Wherever it comes from, I mean, I can't be certain, but I think it's coming from somewhere in the universe into my mind through my higher self. But I trust it now because I've seen over the years that it's pretty infallible. It has not guided me in a wrong direction.
You know, you were talking about intention. It sounds like intention has a lot to do with this. Could you go into that a little bit? What is intention and how do we use it to find our higher selves, say, for instance?
Yeah, our intention is actually one of the most powerful tools we have. Our intention is what is most important to us in any given moment. And being able to choose our intention is the essence of free will. So at any given moment, we can choose to be somebody who wants to protect against pain and avoid responsibility for ourselves with all of our addictions and other self-abandoning behaviors and all the ways we try and control others. Or we can choose the intention to learn about loving ourselves and ultimately sharing our love with others. The intention to learn about what's truly in our highest good and the highest good of all. And so when we choose that intention opens us. It opens our being. It opens our heart. It opens our mind. It opens our soul. Whereas the intention to protect against pain closes us down. And the problem with that is that when we're closed down, we can't receive love. We can't feel love coming in from spirit or from others. And so we end up feeling very alone and empty inside. And so the intention to learn about loving ourselves is a very, very powerful choice. And it's this choice that raises our frequency. Our frequency is the rate at which we vibrate, and our higher self vibrates at a much higher rate than our physical beings. Our physical beings vibrate at a fairly low frequency so that we can see each other. Spirit vibrates at a higher frequency, so most of us can't see those frequencies. But in order to communicate with spirit, we have to raise our frequency, the frequency of our energy. And the main way that we can do this is by moving into an intention to learn about loving ourselves.
Got it. So from what you're saying also, it sounds like one of the things that stands between us and being able to love ourselves is our fear of pain.
Well, that's exactly what stands in the way. And, you know, it's very sad because when we were little, there was a lot of pain for most of us. There was the loneliness we might have felt, maybe the grief of loss and the heartbreak, maybe helplessness over both ourselves and others. And we don't realize when we grow up that while we're still helpless over others, we're no longer helpless over ourselves. When we're little, and if we don't have parents or caregivers who know how to manage their painful feelings with love and compassion and don't help us manage our painful feelings with love and compassion, then we have to avoid those feelings because our little bodies are way too small to manage these big painful feelings. Well, then we grow up and we don't realize that we're not operating from little bodies anymore. We're grown up and we can learn to manage those feelings. We don't have to avoid the pain. It's not going to kill us like it might have when we were little. But the problem is most people never learn healthy ways of managing pain. And so they automatically, the minute there's any pain, they disconnect, they dissociate from their body and go up in their head. They blame it on somebody else. They get mad at somebody. They turn on the TV and numb out there. They graze in front of the refrigerator. They take a drug. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that people numb out and avoid their pain. And the problem is that all of these ways, just like if you had an actual child who came to you in pain, and instead of attending, you gave the child a cookie and put him in front of the TV and went and took a drink, that child might feel pacified for the moment, which is what our addictions do. But the real issue isn't getting handled. And so the child ultimately is going to feel even worse. And that's what happens on the inner level when we ignore our pain. And it's really amazing, the people that I work with, they find as soon as they start to open to their pain that they actually feel better rather than worse. They're shocked. But when they open to it with compassion, with kindness, with gentleness, then the pain is able to move through us and get released. But when we avoid it, it just gets stuck in our bodies and can actually make us sick. Undigested pain is often a source of illness, and so it's extremely important for us to recognize that we no longer need to avoid it, that we can learn to not only lovingly manage it, but we can learn to learn from our pain, because our pain might have a lot to teach us.
So life isn't for the faint of heart, you say.
Right, that's right. It's not.
Again, I have a degree in psychology, and one of the most difficult cases, it seems to me, are people that were orphaned and that original abandonment, and they develop what I think is called detachment disorder. And it really seems very difficult to get these people to come around to where they can love themselves and therefore love others. Can you speak to this a little bit?
Well, this is where the power of inner bonding is, because, yes, many, many people, not just people who were orphaned, but people who were rejected or abused in many, many different ways. Unfortunately, it's quite common for people to have, serious attachment disorders where they're either very anxiously attached, they're hugely scared of loss, or they're avoidant because they're hugely scared of being controlled. And it does take secure attachment, where two people are secure in themselves, to create a loving relationship. And this is where inner bonding comes in, because the more you practice these 6 steps and learn to love yourself, learn to see who you really are, learn to value, learn to heal the false beliefs that you absorbed as you were growing up, the more secure you feel inside. And that's what allows you to open to a loving relationship, to open and be vulnerable without the intense anxiety of the loss of other. When we're abandoning ourselves by making somebody else responsible for our feelings, and then that person leaves, that's just really devastating. But when we're taking care of our own feelings, when we've adopted that inner child, that hurt, orphaned, abused inner child within, then if somebody leaves, we still feel secure because we have ourselves. We might be sad, but we're not devastated in the same way that we would be when we're abandoning ourselves. And so inner bonding is extremely powerful. Now, I've worked with people who have had the deepest of abuse, who were orphaned, who were in foster homes, on and on, who just had horrible, horrible childhoods, who heal and are able to have loving relationships because of learning how to love themselves. They heal.
It seems like it's kind of this vicious cycle. We get hurt. We're afraid of pain, so we avoid our pain. So we get backed up in pain. We can't access our heart or love through the pain. We can't let love in through the pain. So we're in more pain, and round we go.
Right, round and round we go. But we can break the cycle by learning how to love ourselves. One of our inner bonding facilitators, and by the way, the website is innerbonding.com. I think you gave my email instead, but it's innerbonding.com. One of our facilitators was in over 20 foster homes as a child. Very, very, very insecure upbringing. She's a wonderful facilitator, wonderful parent. She's in a very good relationship. She has 3 wonderful children. She's doing the work of reaching out to people who have been, who have come from awful childhoods, to show, look, you can heal. If I healed, you can heal. And it's her doing her inner bonding work that before she got married. She started when she was quite young. That has enabled her to be a good partner and a good parent and a good facilitator.
Yeah. It seems like if we can walk through our own pain, we suddenly become the facility for others to do the same. Margaret and I are going to have to take a break here. We will be back on the flip side of this commercial break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous transformative broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Margaret Paul, best-selling author of Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You? Margaret, let's talk about looking for love in all the wrong places.
Well, one of the problems is that we tend to attract at our common level of woundedness, which is our common level of self-abandonment, or our common level of health, our common level of self-love. So if we are trying to protect and we're abandoning ourselves, we're judging ourselves, we're in our head, we're turning to addictions, we're making others responsible, we are going to attract somebody who's also doing that. And somebody who's doing that is not capable of loving us because they're not loving themselves. And so, if you're looking for love without loving yourself, then you are inevitably looking for love in all the wrong places. It's got to come from inside. It's got to come from spirit first. And then you'll be in a position to share love. And then you're going to be attracting people who are also capable of sharing love.
Well, that speaks highly of living a spiritual life, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. But a true spiritual life. There's a lot of people that do a spiritual bypass where they sort of bliss out, they meditate, they go up to spirit, but they still completely ignore responsibility for their own feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And this can happen a lot. And then they find themselves in a relationship. They can do the spiritual talk, they might do all the spiritual things, but then they find themselves in a relationship smack into the codependency, into doing their same things that they did before, because they never learned to love themselves and take responsibility for their own feelings. Many people do a spiritual bypass.
Yeah, I call it spiritual denial.
Right.
I'm so spiritual, I'm above what I feel, right?
Right.
I think we've all observed ourselves or others being drawn out of their natural expression when entering into relationship. Why does that happen, and how can we avoid it?
I'm not clear on the question. That we're drawn out of our natural expression?
Yeah, we are drawn out of acting like we normally do, or coming from who we really are, and start acting according to what we think the other person wants.
Well, of course, you see, that's coming from the intention to control. The moment that you give yourself up and try to be who you think someone else wants you to be, you're abandoning yourself and trying to control how that other person feels about you. And one of the things that we all need to come to grips with is that we just don't have that control. Certainly we have some influence over how people feel about us, but ultimately nobody controls you and how you feel about others, and nobody controls others and how they feel about you. And so giving yourself up traditionally backfires. Good relationships are based on being honest, being true to ourselves, not on giving ourselves up and trying to act in some way in order to control the other person's feelings.
Got it. Before we get too far into the last segment here, Margaret, would you mind telling people where they can find your books and services?
Yes, if they go to, my books are on Amazon, but they're also in the store on our website at innerbonding.com. We have a whole lot of free help. We have a free course. We have a lot of articles. There's also a lot of paid courses. There's a lot of ways that people can learn inner bonding and learn how to be loving to themselves. So I hope that you go to innerbonding.com.
Well, thank you for a beautiful free provision. And so many people are mercenary in this day and age. It's wonderful to hear from somebody that offers something for free to help people out. Margaret, I found that, when you are standing in your true self and you're around a bunch of people that aren't, which is if you're standing in your true self, usually the case, okay? So I found that oftentimes individuals are not really comfortable with all that I am. And so I find myself sharing only the parts they can be comfortable with or accept. But however, what I do share is genuine. How does this differ from changing what a person is for another person?
Well, this is taking care of yourself. You see, if you're not sharing a lot because you realize these people are not open, that's really coming from wanting to love yourself. Like if you imagine that the feeling part of you is an inner child, you're not putting that inner child out on a firing line to be judged by all these people. You're tuning into the fact that they're not open, and you're being discerning. And being discerning is very, very important. It's not at all the same thing as giving yourself up to try and control. You're taking care of yourself in that situation rather than trying to control the other people. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It's like many facets, but the same light shining through.
Right.
So, at the beginning of the show, I spoke of sovereignty. And we often think of truly sovereign individuals as not needing anyone. How do you think personal sovereignty supports balanced and loving, supporting relationships?
Well, first of all, it's a myth that we don't need other people. We are hardwired to need each other. We are hardwired to be social beings. And we can certainly become independent in terms of learning to love ourselves and taking responsibility for our feelings. But codependency is what doesn't work, but interdependency is what works. We're there for each other. We're supporting each other. We're sharing with each other. We have each other's backs. We play together. We make love together. We have fun together. We cry together. We need each other for all of these things. And so, I don't see it as being sovereign in terms of I don't need anybody.
As far as being isolated.
When I can take care of myself, and I can really be in connection with others.
It seems like so many of our relationships are inside out and backwards. Instead of tapping into the frequency of love, moving it through ourselves into the world, and therefore showing up with our baggage full, what we're doing is trying to suck it out of the world around us, never being able to receive it. Is this what you're seeing as well?
That's right, and it's so sad. And that's what these people feeling empty and feeling alone and feeling lonely and anxious, depressed because they are looking for somebody else to give them what they need to be giving themselves. And sometimes people feel like, well, if they didn't get it as they were children, then somebody else has to give it to them as an adult. But that's a big false belief. The only one who can give it to us is us as adults. Now, that's not to say that others can't help us, that their love isn't wonderful, but others' love has to be the icing on the cake. We have to create the basis for that. Our love and our taking responsibility is the cake, and then others is the icing. But if we're not loving ourselves, we have no foundation for receiving love from others. It's very sad that I've worked with people who, for example, were in a marriage with somebody who really was loving them, was really there for them, but because they were abandoning themselves, they didn't feel deserving of the love, and they were very controlling, and they eventually got a divorce, thinking it was the other person, and then they start to do inner bonding, and they think, oh my God, I let go of this wonderful, loving relationship because I wasn't loving myself, not because that person wasn't loving me.
That's really the sad part is, we're taught to believe that it's our job to make our partner happy. And you've heard this, there's no pleasing you. Well, if you aren't present with yourself, there is no pleasing a person, because you're trying to fuel yourself without plugging the cord into the wall. You can't turn the light on. You've got to plug into
That's
source
right.
first,
Exactly
and nobody
right.
can give that to anyone else. And that's pretty much what you've been saying the last hour, right?
Right. That's exactly right. And so, I really encourage people to learn inner bonding. It's very, very life-changing. The people who I work with thousands of people over the years all over the world. These people who are practicing inner bonding, and many of them just learn it free through the books and through the website. It's life-changing. I hear from them all the time about how their lives have completely changed, their relationships have changed, because of learning to love themselves and take responsibility for their feelings.
Got it. Well, this has been so enlightening, and I think it's kind of reframed how we look at love, and I think that's a reframing that really, really needs to happen, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It does need to happen.
Margaret, thank you so much for being on the program with us. We have about half a minute. Do you have something you want to share?
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share inner bonding with your audience, and I hope you all go to the website and take our free course and start this life-changing process. Thank you so much, Gwilda. You've been a wonderful host.
Well, Margaret, thank you for your beautiful, beautiful work in the world, and I would advise people start learning to love themselves as soon as possible. That's what makes the world go round, right? Our guest this hour has been Dr. Margaret Paul. She's the best-selling author of Do I Have to Give Up Me to Be Loved by You? Also, she says, do I have to give up me to be loved by God? That could be interesting. Or do I have to give up me to be loved by my children? Margaret's website, www.innerbonding.com. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and embrace universal love.